Welcome to ordinary meeting of Hunters Hill Council 4525. Could you all please be upstanding? I'd like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of elders past, present and emerging on which this meeting takes place. I'll invite Father Aleki to come and give the prayer. Thank you, Father.
So we pray in the name of our God, the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. A reading to guide us in our prayer this evening from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 6 to 9. Seek the Lord while he is still to be found. Call to him while he is still near. Let the wicked man abandon his way, evil man his thoughts. Let him turn back, the Lord, who will take pity on him, to our God, who is rich in forgiving. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not my ways. It is the Lord who speaks. Yes, the heavens are as high above the earth. My thought, my ways are above your ways. My thoughts above your thoughts. Always grateful, loving God, our Father and our Mother, for the opportunity to hear your word. And for tonight, reminding us to seek you in our families, in our workplace, how we speak, the way we think. And thank you for the faith that you have given to us, that you are with us always. And let us pray. Loving God, our Father and our Mother, we thank you and we praise you that we have this time to pause from what we normally do and to give you this very short, brief time to be in communion with you. We thank you in a special way for the gift of faith that you have given to us, handed down by our ancestors, our grandparents, and our parents. We ask for the gift of your Holy Spirit, the gift of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding upon our mayor and the councillors of our municipality. That we serve you as they serve our brothers and our sisters. We say together the prayer that Jesus himself taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. And may our loving God bless us all, the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Please be seated. The proceedings of all council meetings in open session, including all debate and addresses by the public, are recorded and webcast live on council's website for the purpose of facilitating community access. Webcast archives are stored and available to the public on council's website. The recordings may be disclosed under the provisions of the Government Information Public Access Act of 2009, the GIPA Act. Members of the public attending council meeting may have their image, voice and personal information, including their name and address, recorded, publicly broadcast and archived, or as an observer or an interested party, members of the public consent to the use of their image, voice and personal information. Councillors, we don't have any apologies for this evening. Do we have any declarations of interest? I have a significant non-pecuniary interest in item 3.1, the Woolwich Marina Development application. If I could just, have you got that provision? Under 5.9 Part D, membership of council's representative of a board or management committee organisation that is affected by a decision or a matter under consideration in circumstances where the interest of the council or the organisation are potentially in conflict in relation to a particular matter. Given that I sit on that consent body, if an eventual application is made and it goes to the North Region Planning Panel, I'll be recusing myself from that vote, and Councillor Crassoy will be taking the chair because I have to sit on and deliberate over the decision that's made once the reports are finalised. I will also say, councillors, that it is my view that if the council adopts the motion in the paper, that that would be a real conflict of interest, and I will not be participating in that application, the deliberation of that application, nor will I, or I will very strongly be advising the other Hunters Hill Council representative that is represented on that panel from recusing himself as well, because we would, by virtue of the application of the submission of a report as outlined in item 3.1, would constitute a conflict of interest for both myself and the other appointed council representative on that panel. Councillors, I move to item 1, confirmation of minutes of ordinary meeting 4523 held 28 August 2023. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Preston, seconded Councillor Vergara. Any discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll draw your attention to page 12 of the minutes. At the top, there's a record of voting in relation to a motion that I moved, and that would be in relation to release information about the Montefiore matter. The record of voting shows 3 voting for, 3 voting against, and then simply that the motion was not carried. I presume if the motion was not carried, and I don't recall it being recorded at the meeting either, the minutes should record that you have used your casting vote for that matter to be defeated.
Sorry, Councillor, what page are we on?
Top of page 12.
That'll be correct.
That'll be correct, I think.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? If not, I'll move to, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 2 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes of extraordinary meeting 4524 held 12 September 2023. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Preston. Any discussion? If not, Councillor Quinn.
A question I noticed on page 5 of those minutes. Not sure what paper is in the whole business paper, but it notes that you abstained from that vote.
Correct.
But it goes in the record as against. That's the procedure.
Yes, right. But there was an abstention.
Just true, Mr. Mayor. If the council elects to abstain, it's recorded as a no vote. Yeah.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. There are no mayoral minutes and reports. Notices of motion, including rescission motions. Item 3.1, I will be leaving the chamber. Councillor Crassoy will be taking the chair. I reiterate, councillors, as a result of this, if this motion is passed, it is my view that I will have to recuse myself from any deliberations of the Sydney North Planning Panel, because council will have made a application under the DA process that is currently under assessment by our staff. Thank you, Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you. We have some speakers for this motion. So first on the list is Mr. David Salter. Thanks, Mr. Salter. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Any consideration of this proposal must begin by asking a fundamental question that goes right back to Roman law. Cui bono? Who benefits? This is a large development in a public space. As such, it must first prove itself to be of significant benefit to the residents and ratepayers of Hunters Hill. The opposite is the case. It would be to their detriment and only to the commercial benefit of the owners of the Woolwich Marina and their future clients. The proposal is to add around 36 berths. Now, even assuming that every owner of those extra boats was a local, which of course they wouldn't be, they would still constitute just 0.02% of the Hunters Hill population. but the cost to the general community here would be significant. My written submission briefly outlined the flaws in the proposed design and the increased parking and access issues that would inevitably arise. Anyone who visits the area at the bottom of Margaret Street on a weekend will know the current levels of congestion. The addition of the people and cars associated with another 36 motor yachts could only make those traffic and parking problems worse. Now, this council likes to bask in its heritage credentials. It is quick to evoke the battlers of Kelly's Bush. I'm old enough to remember that struggle. But what the battlers fought wasn't just to save the trees. It was also the wonderful open outlook from the foreshore, up and down the Parramatta River and across to Cockatoo Island. Back then, the Woolwich Marina was a very modest affair, not much more than the existing shed and a traditional short jetty. It was in keeping with the scale and character of the whole site. The more recent twin pontoon development has already ruined much of the view from that pleasant grassed public area along the Kelly's Bush waterfront. This proposed extension would birth 7 super yachts, each up to 35 metres long. That's 115 feet, longer than the giant Sydney Hobart yacht Wild Oaks. Motor cruisers of that size are at least 8 metres high. That would be a towering wall of fiberglass that would block a fine outlook forever. So my question remains, cui bono? Is it the marina business and a handful of boat-owning millionaires, or the community? There is no need for this development and no benefit to the residents and ratepayers of Hunters Hill. The council should not support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. If you just wait a moment, any questions of Mr. Salter? Thank you.
Thank you.
The second speaker for this topic is Mr. David Griffiths, AM.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Griffith.
Look, I don't have a lot to say. I've been a resident of Longyearbor from 1951 to 86 and Hunters Hill from 86 to today. And so I've been through all these battles with our parents and others that fought for Kelly's Bush and other things. So I'm speaking in support of this motion of Councillors Sanderson and Williams. The motion is extremely well prepared and succinctly addresses most of the issues that make this development application to take over an important area of public space, albeit a huge part of a congested and busy waterway, so obscene. And I use the word obscene, and I don't use it lightly. And I agree with everything the previous speaker has said. He has very aptly portrayed the whole nature of this development. So first, we've got the heritage issues, which are considerable. The residents have fought to maintain open space for public at large to use. And it's not just Hunters Hill residents. You go down to Kelly's Bush, there are people from all over Sydney fishing, out in kayaks, paddling up and down. They come from everywhere. This is a public area of Sydney, and it's a lot of people are there and use the horse paddock, Clark's Point, for picnics, and it's just an amazing part of that Hunters Hill provides for the rest of Sydney. And it's absolutely tragic to think that someone would want to obliterate that spectacular view across to Cockatoo Island and Spectacle Island by these huge boats. And I know boats. I race a large Grand Prix race yacht. I know boats better than anyone in Sydney. I'm on the board of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. And I can tell you, I cannot believe that this is a proposal that anyone would seriously contemplate. The amenity of the residents and public recreational area will be so hugely diminished, and not just vehicles, but big trucks have to come and service these things. That's why most of these spaces, such as Sydney City Marina, are basically industrial areas like under the Anzac Bridge. So the parking won't be just a few more cars that they can park on site. There's got to be deliveries all the time, large industrial trucks coming and going. Now, last Sunday morning was a beautiful scene. Many of us, we walk our dogs down there and through Kelly's Bush and across through the horse paddock. Between Cockatoo Island and the foreshore, was a sea of people out there enjoying sailing from the sailing club, kayaking, etc. In the middle of this, you had those high-speed government catamarans crossing in the middle of it. Now, if you restrict this waterway even more, the danger is going to be immense. And as let alone the usability of this area for the people at large. So all I can say is...
Sorry, just a moment, Mr Griffiths. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour of extension of time? It's carried.
I've nearly finished. But the other bit that never comes into any of this is that we have a huge revival, you could say, for want of a better term, of sea life in the harbour. We've had whales in the other day. We're getting dolphins, we're getting seals. These animals travel up and down. And if you restrict them to a narrower channel, and this is what marinas do, these large animals cannot passage through marinas. So you've got a made passageway, and you think of the restriction for animals of travelling up and down. And this, I think, is something that's not covered by anybody, but needs to be observed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you just wait a moment, Mr Griffiths? Thank you. Councillor Sanderson, you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Griffith. You've probably heard stories that your father told me about the Lanco 12-foot skiff sailing club championships that my father and your father fought out. I'm sure you'd be familiar with the use of the area of Parramatta River, which you used to refer to as the gutter. How important is it for boats that come around a mark like the Spectacle Island Beacon to be able to work up that launch foreshore?
Well, of course, anyone who sails knows that, you know, when you're going upwind, you've got to tack. And when you're getting downwind, you get gusts of wind in your spinnaker and you've got to pull away and you need room to manoeuvre. And when these boats are travelling at speed with spinnakers up or trying to find a bit of area to work upwind, it's absolutely important you've got a breadth of waterway. Now, growing up on the Lane Cove River, we used to work all up and down the shore. We could do it here. But even with yachts, you can get in and out of yachts, even though it may be prohibited, but kayakers can get in and out of moored yachts. They can't get in and out of marinas. Marinas just block everything. And they're best confined to the headwaters of some bay that's been determined to be allowed to be blocked off, but it doesn't block a passage. This is in the middle of a fairway. I mean, it's just, as David said earlier, how the first extension of the marina happened, I do not know. We were all asleep, I guess. To go further is, I'm speechless about the whole thing, as you can imagine. So I just think if we're looking at future generations, this is mission critical that this proposal is killed. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Sanderson? Any more questions of Mr Griffiths? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Maureen Flowers.
Thank you, Ms Flowers. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm speaking as the Secretary of Friends of Kelly's Bush, and I know others are covering in great detail the obvious serious problems with this proposal, such as the takeover of a vast stretch of public waterway, the profound impact on the connecting vistas to and from internationally recognised heritage sites, the inappropriate bulk and scale of the proposed extension, and the noise, safety and parking issues that will adversely impact the local community and visitors alike. No, what I'd like to highlight tonight is the lack of moral integrity of this proposed development, which is totally at odds with the social significance of the site. Kelly's Bush was saved by the actions of a group of community-minded people fighting for public amenity over private profit. The proponents of this development now seek exactly the opposite by exploiting public amenity for private gain. The point of the green ban over Kelly's Bush was to protect its natural topography and foreshore for future generations. This heritage listed bush was gifted to the people of the Commonwealth, and its setting between the shore and the World Heritage listed Cockatoo Island must not now be compromised. This project is obviously not for the greater good. The inaccuracy of the image of the view from Kelly's Bush presented by the applicant, and the fact that the current operator has been in serious breach of council regulations on multiple occasions says it all. Sadly, our modern day self-serving push to expand development endlessly, from building huge single homes to the fence lines, removing vegetation and tree cover, to overdeveloping sites, and covering the ground with concrete. This push now appears to extend even into our waterways. And this, yet again, with no thought to our precious and fast disappearing ecological environment, or the impact that hard structures, pollution, lights, and noise will have on wildlife both at sea and on land. The greed and exploitation of the earth is a true indication of our modern malaise. But is this push for more and bigger development the saddest part? No, the saddest part is that we all know that within a few short years, if we continue pillaging our natural world by allowing these small incremental changes, we will reap what we sow. Nature will have the last laugh, and unlike the Kelly's Bush battlers, whose concern was for future generations, our own children will no longer inherit the earth.
Thanks, Ms Flowers. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Maureen. I just have a broader question. If everything that you say is accurate and if it is ethically unsound and all the other things, don't you think that the Sydney North Planning Panel would reject the application as it comes to them? It's not for us to determine.
No, it's not for us to say. I really don't know. But I think the people of this community and who are close to this project and who know Kelly's Bush and its history will probably be the better judges, to be honest, because we have got all of that information to hand. I'm not really sure North Sydney Planning Panel will have. We know the social significance of this site. We know what the Kelly's Bush battlers fought for. And just to just sort of, okay, well, it doesn't matter now. We'll have 3-story high boats protruding out into the water and blocking all of that sort of natural habitat. It's very dangerous, I think. In fact, the New South Wales Conservation Council has just today issued an SOS for our foreshores and waterways, that things are actually much worse than they thought they were. So they're starting a campaign.
That's what I'm saying. So in light of all of that, surely the panel that's in place to determine this application, i.e. not council, will reject it.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But I mean, would we want to take that chance in our backyard?
But we don't get to say.
No, but we would support a motion that would actually not, it wouldn't go further.
Thank you, Councillor Begara.
I'm wondering if you think it's better, given what if the motion's passed and a Huntersville councillor on the panel has to have this motion, or a member on there as they experience report to essentially the items here, but with a vote.
How many are on the planning panel? Yeah,
But at least that's one.
one voice, but there might be, I don't know.
There's none. If we pass this and a Huntersville person's recused, the view on
Yes, I'm not.
This or the voice. Not that one.
How can I? I'm not sure how I can make the decision, really. I don't know, but I just think our local experience and this motion is a pretty good guide of what we want.
We don't.
Yeah.
So you can answer that. You don't approve.
Yes.
Yes, go to the
Not sure.
how expensive it is.
Yeah. So I just asked the General Manager and I might ask Director of Planning to clarify for you, Ms Flowers.
Yes.
Off the back of Councillor Prieston's question there, you just at the end said that we want council to stop it here. And so we just need to clarify that a vote to support this motion tonight doesn't stop it here. It goes to the panel either way. A vote to support the motion tonight is just a submission of our if it gets up.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify that you understand.
Thank you. I think the vote for this motion, I think, would be send a signal via council. So that's my feeling.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Tom Atkinson also speaking on this topic tonight. Mr. Atkinson, it looks like you're already aware that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the motion. Woolwich Marina DA 2023-0094. The agenda papers for the August 28, 2023 Hunters Hill Council meeting listed a litany of complaints and identified non-compliance to conditions of consent by Woolwich Marina operations over the last 5 years, including car parking and impact on surrounding residents. The proposed development application DA 2023-94 appears to have no intent to resolve any outstanding issues or compliance breaches previously identified by council. The same agenda papers showed that council identified several further breaches over the following months, including ongoing use of the marina as an unauthorised function centre. However, apparently, no penalties were issued. The agenda for that meeting also showed that council issued another notice to give a development control order on August 9th, 2023, with response from the marina required by Friday, August 23rd. How long will that grace period continue, or has any action been taken by the marina or council in the 6 weeks since August 9? The proposed development is of such a scale and design that it will obscure the entire open space shoreline of Kelly's Bush and impact views to and from the nearby heritage-listed sites on Cockatoo Island. The area of impact along Kelly's Bush foreshore is classified as Zone 8 Scenic Waters, passive use, where under New South Wales SEP conditions, marinas and mooring pens are prohibited. The proposed additional mooring pens will create over 170 metres of dead-end channel along the foreshore, allow access to only 11 boats, while obstructing with marina pens and large boats up to 9 metres high, almost the entire public open space frontage of Kelly's Bush foreshore, Zone B. Safety has also been identified as a major issue, particularly fire risk. Over recent years, at least 6 examples of marina-based luxury boats have required up to 12 fire trucks and 50 firefighters to quell the flames. 1. Newport Marina, 6 luxury cruisers. Birkenhead Point Marina, New Year's Eve, 2018. 3. Newport Anchorage Marina, Sydney Hobart Contender Santinita 2. This is a yacht explosion, March 2021.
Sorry, just a moment, Mr. Atkinson. Councillor Priest and Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour for extension of time? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Number 4, Drummoyne. President's boat shed and boats were destroyed and adjacent residences damaged December 30th, 2021. 5, Church Point Marina, 3 boats destroyed August 23. And 6, Woolwich Dockyard, the Oakley family and Diamo, in September 2023. These are but a few examples of the inherent dangers around marinas. How could any significant event be managed by New South Wales Emergency Services with the confined access to Kelly's Bush and the Woolwich Marina? There is no adequate fire or emergency safety plan currently contained in the Woolwich Marina development proposal, either for the marina or particularly for events originating from moored boats at the marina. For all the reasons identified above, DA 2023-0094 should be opposed, in my opinion, by Hunters Hill Council.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Councillors, does anyone? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question in light of what you said tonight, Tom, for the General Manager. I'm hoping it might bring to light some of...
Sorry, could you speak up, please?
I'll try. I don't have a microphone. I'm just going to ask a question to the General Manager in light of some of the queries that you raised with regard to the notices that have been issued to the owners of the marina.
Yes.
Through
To the
you,
Chair, General Manager.
to the GM, would you be able to shed some light on the outcome of the notices issued by council to the owners of the marina due to the non-compliance?
So my understanding, but I probably will refer to the Director of Town Planning. It's my understanding that the officer who is responsible for issuing those notices is still investigating that matter. But I will refer to the Director because that officer reports to the Director of Town Planning. But my understanding is that they're still under investigation.
Through you, Madam Mayor and General Manager, is correct. Still in investigation. The October report that's been referred to was a detailed outcome report with regard to the non-compliances. And that, from memory, established and clarified the uses and they were cleared on the uses. We issue draft notices, and as you know, we have to provide those notices a certain time period and provide everybody with a procedural fairness. We just can't go, as we say, boots and all. So we have to offer whoever it is a procedural fairness to follow a timeline and allow them to respond. It's standard. We do that a lot. We don't want to. We want to ensure that we're safe, and we don't want to put council at arm's length legally. So, as the General Manager said, we are pursuing that one notice, or the issue that I see at the moment down the marina is storage facilities landing on car parking spaces which are not used, and that's the only issue from memory following the October report. And mind you, that is just the uses or non-compliances. The motion is basically only to talk about the DA. Two different separate animals.
Thanks, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Any other?
Oh, what about procedural fairness for the residents? You know, I mean, how long does it take to?
Thank you.
And there's
Any
the
other
person.
questions of Mr. Atkinson? Councillors? No. Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have one more speaker, and that's Dr. Beverly Bennett.
Thank you. I might be the new girl by the sound of things to the area, but no less passionate. And it's part of the reason that we actually really loved the idea of moving to the area on the border of Kelly's Bush. I've also got some photographs tonight I'd present. I made a PowerPoint, but unfortunately we're not that technologically savvy just yet. Very happy to forward through the photos afterwards. I'd like to start by paying my respects to the Walmadigal people, elders past, present and emerging, and extending that respect to First Nations people who are present both here and remotely. In terms of the marina expansion 20230094, I implore you to reject this application. We should have the integrity to say that this is not being done with us, it will be done to us. The marina expansion does not benefit the community, and I think you've heard at quite some length today where and how that applies, much more eloquently than I can put this evening. However, I'll give it a go. The heritage values of this site are both of local, national and international significance. This was the site of the birth of the environmental green movement for the world. This is something we should treasure and be so very proud of, rather than desecrate with 3-story yachts parked in front of such a beautiful site. The history of the local area should also be considered. John Clark's house, Woodstock, is adjacent to this site. The impact on the community is enormous. Access to the waterfront cannot be brought back. There is an impact on flora and fauna, and you might think that that's insignificant in busy suburban Sydney, but that place is a little green balm for the soul. There are seals, stingrays. The bush is alive and the waters are regenerating themselves. We have to support that for both us and our future generations. The impact on traffic and parking has already been mentioned ad nauseum, and so lovely that the traffic management plan included a green plan, but I sincerely doubt that owners of maxi yachts will be catching the bus down the hill from Mara Sisters to the marina. It's a lovely thought. The parking also should be considered. On Sunday morning, 3 weeks ago, there were 7 vehicles in the parking lot. The current allowance is 12. The proposed increase is for 20, when the footprint of the marina will be trebled or quadrupled in real terms. It really seems insufficient that 20 parking spots would be adequate given the current state of play on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, a reasonably low activity period of time, fair to say. The following week, there were 8 cars, and this Sunday there were 9 cars, reflection of summer increasing weather and the beautiful environment that all of Sydney does absolutely come to enjoy.
Moment. Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour of time extension, that's carried. Thank you.
So the other thing that Tom did highlight is safety concerns, and I think this has been brought home to us with the Woolwich dock fire. That was something that, if that happened on the marina site, would be an environmental and social catastrophe for our community. Putting booms in Woolwich dock is an easy exercise. Leaching of chemicals and spread of the damage would be enormous if that happened on the marina site. Furthermore, there are people that live on boats long term. How do we get those people to safety in a reasonable time? There are people living in the marina residence and people surrounding the marina in terms of our residences. What of our safety? I also would ask, where do the emergency vehicles and water pumps reside around there? Is that a safe area? Can we be provided with information about that? The other question you raise is around other proposals in the area and the Northern Sydney Planning Commission. I would hope that they came to the same decisions that had been made around commensurate developments, both in the Gladesville Bay Marina and the Berries Bay with Standards Marine versus North Sydney Local Council. We have a responsibility to represent our community here. The marina is a gated facility. It is not open for the public. It is not in our best interest. We will not get to use this site. The expansion will further narrow a pinch point on the river and, as already highlighted, causes a traffic hazard, not just for paddlers, particularly ironic given there's a paddle business in the marina where you're able to try the kayaks on the river, but also impacting ferries, rowing boats from private schools, as well as fishing boats. The marina will house oversized vessels. The oversized vessels are not modest recreational fishing craft. They are not for our community. I suspect many of them might even already be housed at the marina as oversized boats, many of them part of the Woolwich Marina Yacht Club that can be hired for cruises to a privileged few who can afford the bill. The views to and from Cockatoo Island and Kelly's Bush will be obscured by super yachts. A case in point is even this afternoon, as I went down to the waterfront and looked across at Cockatoo Island in front of Circus Spirit, I could not see the island. This is one boat. We're talking about 7 boats. The view will be obscured and gone forever. I would also like to highlight Tom's review of the non-compliance of previous DA requirements. And of course, that is something that should be considered as a part of this. There are consistently oversized boats moored at the marina, moats moored in the no berthing zone, which has an impact on public safety, and those boats are very large. Parking space requirements.
Sorry, Ms. Bennett,
Dr. Bennett.
Dr. Bennett, my apologies.
Okay.
Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson moved to extend time. Just a question, do you have much further?
No, I do not. It was all in pictures, which take 1,000 words, so I apologise for my tardiness.
No, not at all. Please continue.
The use of the manager's residence as a function centre is very easy to find online. And in fact, last night I found this with a very inexperienced trawl. I'm not good at using the internet, but you could book for the Melbourne Cup through Eventbrite. There were multiple functions that have been held there. Hay House was not the only business that was running functions there. This was not a one-off wedding venue. This is something where we saw a passing parade of events over a period of time. We also saw the marina used as a harbour cruise collection point. Having said all of that, I know I can look at my children and say, I shared what I knew. I said what I must, and we should do what we can to prevent this massively overdeveloped natural piece of land abutting a modest marina. I would implore you to please consider your actions today, because once that land is gone, it's gone forever.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. Councillors, any questions? Thank you.
Can I just seek some clarification before asking Dr. Bennett a question? And it's actually directly through you. Can people, residents, anyone, attend these types of submissions?
I can answer the question. Yes, they can, but I'll defer to the General Manager to direct accordingly.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The answer is yes, Councillor Vergara. So it's just think of tonight, people can come and speak on the day and attend as a gallery.
So I'll ask the same question, because to me, one of substance I accept. How best can we act to stop this? But if passing this motion would mean that the Hunters Hill Council representative had to abstain, recuse. Would your preference be that we pass this motion and have one less voice, or have everyone attend and have a person who has heard the residents express that through a vote?
Who would be the person who's attending?
It's the mayor.
Thank you. The mayor's the council's representative.
But I think the mayor has already said that he's got a conflict of interest.
He's got a conflict if this motion passes. Any Hunters Hill councillor, if this motion passes, the Hunters Hill councillor representative on the Northern Sydney Planning Panel would have to abstain, i.e. not have a vote. So I'm asking, would it be better for residents to attend a panel that includes the Hunters Hill councillor voting?
I think that's a question that we should consider as a group and a collective. I also think having this done to us is very different of being at the table as a single voice. One vote is not going to sway everything. What we need to do is mobilise community support and make sure that everyone else understands what we know of this area.
Agree.
So I'm very happy to represent myself and my community.
Agree.
But I think that there's power in saying that this is something as a community that we think is an outrageous overdevelopment, that this is not in our best interest.
And that can be said by everyone attending and saying this, but it seems to me that the voices and a vote is better than just the voices. That's what I'm concerned about. How do we maximise the chances of it not being approved by the panel?
I guess that's why you're the councillor and I'm speaking passionately about the community that you represent.
Yeah, I'm just seeking your view on those two options.
Thanks.
I'd like to see this stopped.
Thanks, Councillor Vergara. Councillor Sanderson.
I've got a question, if I could, through you, acting Madam Mayor, that I don't know if it's handled by the General Manager of the Director, but I'd point out in Lane Cove, there's a very long history where Lane Cove Council itself did a significant amount of development, and at that point in time, Councillor Scott Benson was generally their representative on both the JRPP and later Sydney North Planning Panel. The usual practice was that Councillor Scott Benson did declare an interest in using himself, but the other member didn't. Now, in our case, the two other members, potential members or potential representatives on that panel would be David Logan or Barry Buffier, both who are members of our independent local planning panel, and I therefore believe they would be above having to excuse themselves from serving on that panel. I get clarification of that.
Thanks, Councillor Sanderson. General Manager, would you like to direct that question about the planning panel?
By all means, the Director can add to my comments in a moment, but Councillor Sanderson, you're 100% correct, but just keep in mind that the North Sydney Planning Panel will have its own codes of conduct, code of meeting practice, and then those individual members it has to be their decision of whether they wish to sit. We can't direct. They have to make that decision as a member themselves. But I think objectively, one would sense that I would not see any reason why they could not participate in that panel.
So essentially, we shouldn't seek to influence or direct their decision on whether they represent us at that panel.
I would actually say the opposite, Deputy Mayor, that we shouldn't be saying anything to them. They have to make that decision on their own. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want to add to that, Steve?
No, thank you. That's correct.
Thank you, councillors. Any other questions of Dr. Bennett?
Just through you, Deputy Mayor, Dr. Bennett, if you do want to send me through that presentation with your blessing, I can forward that to our councillors.
We've provided that information
Okay,
before when
thank
we
you.
opposed the DA for the car
Okay.
parking, so certainly happy to expand on it with the information.
So you're fine if I send that to our councillors?
Yeah,
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Priestner?
Hi, I just have a point of clarification before I ask a question. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the
Through me.
Director of Planning, why is it the role of the Sydney North Planning Panel to consider and determine the proposal?
Thanks. Councillor Priestner, General Manager.
Yeah.
There's two parts. There's a threshold and a criteria, and it was the dollar value and the type of development that triggers it to go to that panel.
So it's the three Deputy Mayor, it's council precedent. It's basically once it gets over a financial threshold, which was exactly the same with Priory, because it's over that threshold. So just for the avoidance of doubt, council is not the consent authority, it goes to that panel.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question. What is council's ability to negotiate or potentially restrict the applicant's DA if it's approved at the Sydney Northern Panel?
Well, that's definitely a question for Steve, yes.
Through you,
Or is there a process? Just what happens
there's no negotiations. It's basically a final outcome of a report and decision by the panel.
So whatever the Sydney North Panel
Yeah,
determines
and
is-
conditions imposed.
Yeah.
It's they're the consent authority.
So just to add to that, Deputy Mayor, obviously we've gone through the notification period where people have been able to come in and object. And now the officers are assessing that, because that's quite a complex DA to assess. So they'll assess it, put their report together, and then it will go, just like it did with the Crow, it will then be forwarded to the planning panel. And I don't have a crystal ball in front of me here, but I'll be surprised if that goes before the end of the year. And if it did, it'd be right at the end. I'm suspecting that's likely to go to early next year, but I could be wrong because the assessment is still nowhere near completed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just through you, I mean, just the timing. It's we have had a lot of interest and a lot of submissions. Closed on the 1st September, we received 409 submissions. So we're really aiming at a particular anticipated time to finish it towards the end of the year. But now with these 409 submissions and the issues raised, we want to take our time and really go through in detail and look at all the issues. So it might tick over to the new year, or we aim for it to be finalised by November or December.
So is it council's role to provide the submissions to the panel?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. And my question to the speaker, will you be making a submission as an individual to the panel who's determining the application?
I can see no reason why I wouldn't if I made a submission at this level and continue to have those views. Yeah, absolutely. I would hope that we would be able to get even more community support given the importance and significance of this site, both locally and beyond.
Yeah, so that the actual determiner of the application can assess those considerations. That would be.
I would hope that we would have council's support as well.
Thank you.
So just through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Prieston and the other councillors, so when the report goes to the panel, just like a council meeting, gets publicly published on their website, when their meeting is, registered to speak, etc. Same process.
Thank you.
So I totally understand everything that's been mentioned there so far. Where I'm a little bit uncertain is that the director and his staff are doing the assessment of the application, and preparing a recommendation for the panel.
Sorry, councillor
Just-
Quinn, do you have any more questions of Dr.
Oh,
Bennett?
sorry. No, I don't. No.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
this
you,
is a
Dr.
question to,
Yeah.
sorry, I should have said that. So where I just want to be crystal clear, because the motion that we have before us tonight is that council, noting that council is not the council opposes the application. Now, we've got council officers who are doing the assessment and will be preparing their report to go to the panel, independent of what we resolve tonight or not.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Technically, under the process, the council staff of any council needs to do the assessment and provide their report to the panel for their consideration. In this particular case, we've engaged an independent planner to prepare that report to be tabled at the for the panel to consider.
You're a wise man, Mr. Dreyfus, for doing that.
Just to add to that, Deputy Mayor. So Councillor Quinn, and I'll try my best to articulate a response to your question. My interpretation of the notice of motion that's been brought forward by Councillor Williams and Councillor Sanderson, that you would have to make your decision as elected members. And if we use the word council in inverted commas, that's sending a message that the elected members of our council have taken that vote. And then the independence of the report with the officers, that's two separate things.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson.
If I could just clarify one point, one of the amendments in the drafting of the motion that I suggested to councillor Williams, that the wording be that the governing body of Huntersville Council. So that can find.
So we can put that into the debate. Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Any other questions based off the presenters? Otherwise, councillor Williams, you have a motion you'd like to move.
I please ask the question. Would it not be, maybe through you, Deputy Mayor, to the Director of Planning, would it not be a conflict of those members of the LPP to represent council on the Northern Sydney Planning Panel determining an application, despite what we've said, if there's a view put forward by the council to that panel? That doesn't sit well with me, so I'm just checking.
Okay, so I think this question came earlier, but General Manager,
I
would
just
you
want
like
to be
to
double
rephrase it,
because that might
perhaps?
still be answered.
Well, first of all, through you, Deputy Mayor, has nothing to do with the LPP. So go straight.
Those members.
Yep, not an issue.
And I can clarify that because I've sat on that body. They are community representatives, not council representatives. So it could be a conflict for the mayor because he's part of the governing body. But I totally agree with what councillor Sanderson said. It wouldn't be for those alternate community representatives.
Thank you. I think any further questions are not coming off the back of the speakers. So thank you to the speakers who've made the time to come and support us in our decision making. Councillor Williams, you have a motion.
I do.
Would you like to
Madam
speak to your
Deputy.
motion? You have a seconder?
Yes, I do. Would you like me to read it?
No.
No?
I even the gallery says no. So I think everyone is really well informed.
Right. That's good. I'd like to just clarify a couple of points that we've heard here today so far in the discussion. And council has an obligation to provide leadership in the community. Has an obligation to put the facts on the table. And this is a classic example where the community is crying out for council to have an opinion. I think it's important that council does have an opinion on something as critical as this. I'm unsure of this debate or discussion about the role of the mayor on the panel, because when I was mayor, council put in an objection to the Glazeville Marina, and I was asked to represent council at that, and I also represented the community and council at the subsequent Land Environment Court hearing. Now, that council, the Canada Bay Council, made it very clear that had objected to the proposal. The mayor of that council still sat on the panel. So I'm a bit unsure, and I think we need to have a look or get advice from the chair of the panel. The mayor has abstained from this meeting. So I think if you look into it a bit more closely, then you might find that the mayor can still represent us. But regardless of that, this is such a monumental issue for Hunters Hill and its community and the legacy we leave for our future generations, that council must have a position on it and must articulate that clearly. And that's the governing body. Clearly, staff will have their own opinion, as they did in relation to the Priory when that was dealt with by an independent assessor. We've heard a lot from the speakers tonight about how they see this issue and how important it is to them. I think there are some key elements in this whole debate. And I'll start off with navigation. We've heard tonight here that that parcel of water is crucial to navigation by sailing boats, kayaks, small dinghies, and a whole range of water users that will be forced closer to and within a very busy commercial, and particularly, I think it's about 90 ferries a day go through their transport hub. It will severely restrict the operations of the sailing community, whether it's the Hunters Hill Club. I've heard submissions from the other sailing communities around that part of Sydney Harbour. So navigation is going to be a crucial issue in terms of how it's going to impact on not only Hunters Hill and Woolwich people, but also the broader boating community and the safety issues around that. Heritage. We've heard here tonight, and reference has been made to Kelly's Bush. Now, some of us here had the opportunity to meet the Kelly's Bush battlers and Jack Mundy, and actually I caught up with Jack Mundy's wife, Judith, a couple of weeks ago. This would be abhorrent to them. It's something, as we've heard, has international status and has had a foundation in the environmental movement and the green movement around the world. To put large commercial or private vessels right in that sightline would be akin to putting apartment blocks alongside it. And those people fought, or the community fought with their leadership to save that precinct for future generations to enjoy, and to isolate a large part of it and to interfere to a large extent with the views to and from. And like heritage is more than just the object. It's about curtilage, it's about social history, it's about context, it's about texture. There's about 8 different things you look at in heritage. It's not just the site itself, it's where it sits, how it's been influenced over the years. And I would find it very hard to find anybody that doesn't acknowledge the significance of the Kelly's Bush battlers in that process. If my memory serves me right, the council's decision of the day back then led to every council being thrown out at the next election. So the community do have passion and feel very motivated by that. It's in a precinct where struggle has typified what Woolwich and Hunters Hill is about. We had the Woolwich Foreshore 2000 group that saved the Woolwich parklands. We've got, as I said, the Kelly's Bush battlers. We've got our own LEP and all the factors that go into that to support heritage. And we've heard about that significant building nearby, which was, I think, one of the first houses in Hunters Hill. So to go forward with this proposal, it will have dramatic, dire and long-term impact on heritage issues, and particularly the legacy of Kelly's Bush. We've heard also the issue of public good over private gain. And if you look at any of the judgments around this area, around this issue, you'll find that, for instance, in the appendix to the motion we've put here, the concept of the public trust is related to the principle of intergenerational equity, as the public trust had been described as the strongest contemporary expression of the ideal that the legal rights of nature and future generations are enforced against contemporary users. So that's a judgment in terms of Berry Bay when they tried to put a large floating dock in that bay. The concept of public trust holds certain common natural resources such as harbours and navigable waters in trust for the benefit of public constraints, government, and in its dealings with the management of natural resources. Of these constraints is the ownership of navigable waters of the harbour and the lands underneath them are held in trust for the benefit of the whole community of the state. So I can go on, there's two very eminent court cases there. Actually, even back again when I was a mayor in the 90s, we had the Pulpit Point development and the marina associated with that. And there was a commission of inquiry, which again, I was involved in. I think Mr. Jenkins in the background there was also involved. And that made it very clear the rights of the public to its views, to its access to the waterways. So there are many examples as to why the importance of community or public good over private gain can be given. And it's also important to recognise the impact on the local residential amenity. We always have contention over parking, noise, people living on the site, potentially. And as we saw in the previous meeting, a list of compliance issues that the council is still investigating. So the impact is multiple. Is on the navigable waters and the safety of people using those, profound impact on the heritage and the importance and the legacy that has been provided, the importance of public good over private gain, and this can only be seen as private gain. It's certainly not in the benefit of the community. And finally, the issue around residential amenity. I think that goes without saying. So thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Do we have any speakers against this motion? For the motion? Sorry, Councillor Priestley.
I might speak against the motion, please. Yep. Thank you. Okay, not only is this motion a politicised and divisive move on the part of the moving councillors, it's indicative of incredibly bad process. Council is to be held to the utmost standards and is trusted to exercise proper process and adhere to all due regulations and process. This, as Councillor Williams said himself, is a grey area. Besides this significant issue, a submission by council to the Sydney Northern Planning Panel will not cause a decision. It is not council's place to determine this application. We should not be discussing it tonight in that vein. It is open to residents to make their own powerful submissions to the panel in relation to this resident's application. I, for one, am not in favour of the development proposal in its current form. However, I think the risk of removing our advocate on that panel would mean that we are left worse off to represent our views. For those reasons, I think that, and I've considered everyone here tonight, I've not made the decision prior to attending the meeting this evening. But I think on balance, it is indicative of potentially truly bad process, leaves us in a precarious position as a governing body to be able to adhere and uphold all of the process and regulation that is bestowed upon us as councillors. And I think that we can all make submissions. We can all make submissions to the panel that will eventually determine this application, not council. And as private citizens, we can express our views, including those on council and including those speakers tonight. I think that would be a far better representation, far more powerful representation as residents who may live nearby to the marina, who may utilise its everything it has to offer, as I do as a resident. And I think that would be a far better guiding light for the panel when they're making their decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Prieston. Any speakers for the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll support this motion. Can I say from the outset that all of the panels at various levels that have been set up by the successive New South Wales governments, they all have a majority of government appointees, all of them. So the balance is not there. I just want to make that point from the outset. I personally believe we will still have a voice at this at the decision when this is made, because in my view, and having sat on that panel myself, I think there is absolutely no risk at all that one of the alternate representatives that we have, the two that were named earlier by Councillor Sanderson, can sit on that panel, because they are not part of the governing body and they have not been part of this decision tonight of council. Now, in my view, this application represents a quite massive issue of alienation of public space in our local area. And we're talking about public space on water. We would never approve, for example, if there was some public land that someone wished to lease, acquire, whatever it might be, to put some operation on, such as a big car park, truck park, whatever it might be, to operate for a profit. It's the same concept. We wouldn't even think of doing that. And that's what we're looking at here tonight in terms of a marine facility on public open space on the water, and handing a section of that over, supporting the handing of a section of that over for private purposes and for gain. I can't support that. I think it's important that this council sends a very strong message to the panel. The governing body sends a very strong message to the panel that this is not appropriate for this community and that we won't accept it. I also note in tonight's business paper, elsewhere in the business paper, there are two of our advisory committees that also raise concerns about the development application. Both the Movement and Traffic Advisory Committee and CAP have both raised concerns about it, and they're in the minutes tonight of our business paper. So for all of those reasons, Madam Deputy Mayor, I just delighted to support this motion and can't support this application going ahead as it is.
Thanks, Councillor Quinn. Any speakers against the motion? For the motion? Oh, Councillor Vigara? For the motion? Yeah.
So based on the community submissions tonight, it's my main concern to ensure that we maximise the prospects of the DA being refused by the Sydney North Planning Panel. Now, it seems unlikely that it will come down to one vote. But in any event, guided by the wisdom of Councillor Williams and Councillor Quinn, that the one vote won't matter, and so I will support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Vigara. Any speakers again? There's Councillor Sanderson. You're the last speaker. Would you like to speak?
I presume do you believe I'll be speaking in favour of the motion? As always happens when I speak at council, when you get the quality of addresses we had tonight, it leaves a few holes in what I'm prepared to say. I started sailing dinghies when I was 9 years old from the old Huntersville Junior Sailing Club, as it was known then, in 1962, when it was located at Onions Point. From 1964 to 1970, I sailed various classes of dinghy on the Parramatta River on courses that utilised this stretch of the Parramatta River between Woolwich and Cockatoo Island, known as the Gutter. And as the question I asked Mr. Griffiths earlier confirms, this is an incredibly important part of sailing water. In about 2010, the existing Woolwich Marina narrowed as part of the Parramatta River between Woolwich and Cockatoo Island from over 350 metres to about 260 metres. This denied sailors the ability to work up the full shore, which we investigated very valuable, particularly in a sea breeze and a flood tide. Proposal to extend the marina arm of the marina, the proposal to extend this south arm of the marina to narrow the river by a further 53 metres to a mere 207 metres and occupy about 40% of the width of the river. Will make this the narrowest passage of the Parramatta River to the east of the Gladstone Bridge. The notion that, and I quote the EIS at this point, that the proposed waterside structures are generally confined to areas or areas already utilised by swing moorings and therefore have no impact on public activities is complete nonsense. It is unfortunate that our waterways have become so clogged with moored vessels, many of which are rarely used, to the extent that local sailing clubs now require boats that are racing not sailed between moored vessels and the adjacent shoreline. But this doesn't mean that boats that are racing cannot go into the mooring field, provided they exit through that same gap. However, the other aspect of this is that, apart from the size of craft and the limitations on the permitted speed, there is nothing to prevent craft not participating in sailing races from navigating through the protected areas of mooring fields as kayaks and smaller power boats frequently do. And that's something, since I've been paddling kayaks, I've frequently done. In paddling kayak around the outer municipality 17 kilometres of shoreline, the greatest obstruction is already Woolwich Marina. Woolwich Marina impedes the freedom of current generations to enjoy the highly valued public resource. The proposal must not be allowed to further impinge on the enjoyment of future generations. This proposal makes me think of the Joni Mitchell song, Big Yellow Taxi. The lyrics, they pay for paradise and they put up a parking lot. How apt. To pave part of the Parramatta River with over a kilometre's length of pontoons, denying the undoubted pleasures of that part of the river to so many, and to put up a parking lot for 36 very large vessels, some of which will burn over a tonne of fossil fuel in a single trip. Why not promote, this proposal simply does not promote the equitable use of foreshores and waterways area, as required by section 6 to 28(1)(b) of the Biodiversity and Conservation Set. The proposed west arm of the marina is possibly even worse. It fails to understand that continuous vistas between the UNESCO-listed heritage item of Cockatoo Island and the state-listed Kelly's Bush, and the 17 heritage items that contribute so much to this vitally important part of our Huntersville Conservation Area number 1. It's important that these vistas be maintained, and it is an absolutely unique heritage resource. Beyond what I've mentioned already, Spectacle Island, which is apparent from Kelly's Bush, is also a state-listed heritage item. And I counted, as I said, 17 items, all of which are visible from the water. This is an absolutely unique landscape and it must be preserved. In terms of getting back to the west end of the marina, this would see the marina pontoon extend a further 110 metres, about the length of the football field, in front of Kelly's Bush Park, where the foreshore is zone 8 under the Biodiversity and Conservation Set Chapter 6. And as Mr. Atkins has already said, this would create a channel about 170 metres long along the foreshore, and this channel would largely reside in in Zone 8 scenic waters, which are zoned for passive use. This proposal will effectively alienate over 5,000 square metres of public open space within Zone 8, and that will be largely used by the marina for the access to the 11 berths that Mr. Atkinson mentioned. It's therefore completely inappropriate for this to occur. I do have some other notes we're going to continue with. We cannot continue to build marinas that further clog our foreshores and waterways. There's just no justification. The housing vessels are rarely used. Clubs like the CYC and Middle Harbour Yacht Club that I was a member of for many years would not tolerate their marinas housing yachts that are rarely used. All marinas and moorings should be managed in a similar way. If vessels are not used, they should be moved to remote or dry land storage or disposed of. Finally, there is an extremely important section of the biodiversity conservation set that sets out vital principles that must be followed in any decision like this. And that's very clear. Section 628(1)(a) of the biodiversity conservation set is clear with these three principles. One, Sydney Harbour is a public resource owned by the public to be protected by the public good. The public good has precedence over the private good. And three, protection of natural assets of Sydney Harbour has precedence over other interests. The proposed development places private good ahead of public good, and in doing so, seriously compromises the natural assets of Sydney Harbour. The proposal is not in the public good, so the development application must be refused.
Thanks, Councillor Sanderson. Preston, Councillor, you have a question?
Yes, please. To the mover of the motion, would you just consider Councillor Williams correcting a typographical error in the motion?
If you tell me what the error is, I'm quite happy to consider it.
I just expected you to read my mind. Of course, I'm going to tell you. It's at 1J Roman 2. It says site, but it should be SIGE site, not SIGHT site.
Happy to accept that.
Thank you. It was really irking me.
Thank you, Councillor Preston. Councillor Sanderson, sorry, just a moment, Councillor Williams, thank you. Councillor Sanderson, you mentioned something earlier and I stopped you because we weren't in debate yet. You talked about wanting to add an amendment to the motion.
No, not at all.
I'd like to speak to the motion as well. Thank you, Councillor Williams, for bringing it to council. We as councillors, we're from this community and we were elected by this community, and we don't only oversee governance over the operational side of council, we advocate to our community and to other levels of government on behalf of the council, on behalf of our community. We've had other processes coming through council where there's a right time for us as a council to make a decision on what our representations may be to other levels of government. In this matter, the only time that we as a governing body get to say our piece to this panel is now. And so we do that at the risk of possibly the mayor, because of his perceived conflict of interest, not representing us on that panel. Councillor Williams, I wonder whether you would consider adding a third point to your motion, which is that council seek clarity around the mayor's perceived conflict, given the precedent examples of Canada Bay and Berries Bay. We haven't finished debate. I'm speaking to the motion.
Everybody's spoken. So if we put an additional thing on the table now, I think it's probably up to the point where it's.
You'd just like me to put it as an amendment?
Yeah, sure.
Is that easier from a process?
Oh, look, okay, just include it, that's fine.
You're happy to include it into the motion? That council seek clarity around the mayor's perceived conflict of interest, given the precedent examples of Canada Bay Council and
The very
North Sydney.
North Sydney Council.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
On that, councillor Williams, so when you were the mayor of Hunters Hill, you sat on the determining panel for the, was it not the Canada Bay? Was it,
no.
how did it work? I'm just,
No.
or was it the Gladesville?
Yeah, no, Madam Deputy Mayor. The issue was the council put in an objection to the development proposal.
Which one?
The Gladesville Marina, right? I was mayor at that time. I represented council at the Sydney East Regional Planning Panel, not as a member of it, but as a person representing Hunters Hill to put in an objection to it.
And that was the consenting authority. Yeah, that's
Okay.
different.
That is different.
Yeah, it was clear that council had a position which
Yeah.
was articulated in the process. And then when it came up for a determination by the authority who has that position, I represented council at that hearing. And
So not as a voting.
No, I wasn't voting. No.
Then there obviously wouldn't be a conflict.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the mayor of Canada Bay. He was on that panel. Right?
Okay.
And Canada Bay.
He abstained?
had clear objection.
He didn't vote.
I'm just looking for precedent.
Thank you.
Anyway.
So there isn't precedent is essentially what we've just clarified. Councillor Quinn.
If I can suggest, Madam Deputy Mayor, I think the mayor has already declared what he perceives as a conflict. So he's probably ruled himself out
Okay.
already.
All right. Well, we don't need to
Our
worry about.
community representatives aren't ruled out, in my view. They can sit.
Thank you. So we don't need to worry about the amendment and I'll just fall back to say the time is now for us as a governing body and it sounds like we have a majority. So Councillor Williams, would you like a right of reply?
Just on a couple of issues, I don't want to protract the evening, but I do take exception to the fact that it's been stated that this is a political motion. It's not. It's one that's hopefully providing clarity for the community as to the leadership that council's prepared to fight on this. The comment was made, I believe it's a grey area, not our place. Well, I disagree totally with that. And really around the table here, there's been conjecture that we know how the mayor is going to vote. We've got no idea how he would vote if he did, but I think Councillor Quinn has already mentioned the fact that he's already accused himself or recused himself of the process. So I think it's a bit rich of us as councillors to presume we know how the mayor is going to vote on this issue. So all I can do is commend this motion to council as the governing body, and staff will do as they see fit from their perspective. But I think it's imperative on such a critical issue as this that council provides some leadership and guidance to its community as to how it sees this proposal, which clearly from the speakers tonight and from the majority of councillors I've heard around the table, that they also agree that this is not a proper, an outcome that should be accepted in this community.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's actually unanimous. No against. Thank you to the community who once again have taken the time to help us in our decision making and deliberations. Could someone please retrieve the mayor? His seat is nice and warm.
Oh, he completely misrepresented his role on that
No, that's right.
I asked the question out of ignorance. And then
He was there speaking his own mind.
Yeah, that is absolutely not a thing. That is so not okay. That's not so exciting.
Still live, I think. We're still live.
It's going to take a minute.
Thank you, councillors. I'm sure you're in good hands in my absence. We'll now move to item 4.1, Code of Conduct.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Could you just ask the people that if I have to just keep moving forward? Thanks.
Councillor Williams.
I'd move that council not adopt the recommendation and that status quo.
Is there a seconder?
Sorry.
That lapses for want of a seconder. Councillors, is there item 4.1? Is there a motion on, is there a move councillor Quinn, seconded councillor Prieston? Councillor Quinn.
I'm just happy with it as it's reported.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, and I believe that what applies to councillors should apply to all committee members as well in terms of code of conduct.
Thank you, councillor Quinn. Any speakers against? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think this is overreach. People offer themselves up to sit on our committees because of their expertise or community interest. They don't have a broad range of spectrums or a broad range of process within council's decision making. They provide advice on a specific issue. For me, we should embrace our community representatives. They're volunteers. They give up their time freely. To then put them under a very strict regime that they haven't been elected to be under. All they've done is offered themselves. And if you look at the report, it uses the term may also include, may prescribe, can take. Like, it's not scripted. We don't have to do this. And I think for a council that's community friendly like Hunters Hill, we're putting an unnecessary process and an unnecessary consideration on people that give up their time. So I can't support it. I think it's an overreach, and council should embrace our community representatives and make it as easy as possible for them. And particularly for those that are already on panels, on our advisory bodies, they're going to have to go through this process for what? 9 months before the next election. If I implore you, if you're going to go down this path, then you'd have to leave it to the start of the next council term. But I think it is a significant overreach and constraint on our advisory bodies.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Any other speakers for? Councillor Vergara.
Council has a legal obligation to protect the work health and safety of its personnel and contractors and volunteers and visitors. In my view, expecting a level of conduct which is just courteous and thoughtful is a small thing that council can do to ensure that it's complying with its legal obligation to protect the health and safety, including mental health and safety of its contractors and volunteers.
Thank you, councillor Vergara. Councillor Williams, question?
Yes, question through you to the General Manager, Mr. Mayor. What are the legal obligations in relation to this? Because as I've read out, all through the report, it talks about may also include provisions, may prescribe, can take an additional position. It's not prescribed anywhere that I can see in the report the council must do this or has a legal obligation to it. Sure, it has all those other obligations, but in terms of doing this, it is at the discretion of council and for the reasons. So is there a response?
General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we do have, as a collective, both in my view, as elected members and certainly myself as the general manager, that we've got a duty of care to our staff. So that goes to making sure that all people are abided by the code of conduct. So general conduct at meetings, and most importantly, I think it's in our best interest that we take the proactive steps to educate, and that's the key word, educate members of all our committees about risks associated with conflicts of interest. That's a good, smart governance process. And for the record, we are one of very few councils, my understanding, that we don't take step to make sure that our committees of council are adhering and abiding by the code of conduct. And also, Councillor
Williams.
I'll also emphasise.
Councillor Williams, if you let the general manager finish his answer, I'm sure you will. Yeah.
And so I'll also emphasise, Councillor Williams, that as is included in the report, that I've sought the advice of the Office of Local Government, and it is their strong advice to me that we should take this step. So to answer your question, I can't take a question from the floor to answer about where we're obligated by law, but what I can answer is we have a duty of care. So I'll leave it at that. Stand by the report.
Thank you. Any other speakers against, for the motion? Right of reply, Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd simply say that I would see this also. I don't see it as banging our committee members over the head with obligations and so on. But what I do see it as is a safeguard, because there might at some time be an occasion where on one of our committees we have to address an issue with one of our committee members. And we need to make sure that there is a framework for that to happen, and that the committee members are aware of that framework from the outset when they join those committees. So I see it as a bit of a safeguard, not something that we're going to be banging them over the head with all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now I move to item 4.2, general purpose financial statements for year ending 30 June 2023. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Is there any discussion? Councillor Quinn.
No, that's all right. We're just committing this to order, so it's pretty straight.
Yes. Yeah. Councillor Crassoy, you have a question? Yes, thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, there are a few items I just wondered about. One of the things I've been through is to look through and see whether there are significant differences from one year to the next. And I note that on page 39, item 10B1, employee benefits and on cost, the amount for employee leave entitlements in 2022 was 76,000, and it's reduced to 15,000. That seems like a pretty significant alteration. Is there some explanation for that?
Through to the general manager or finance director.
I believe I do know which note. Can you give me the specific page, please?
Page 39 of the page of paper, 24 of the report. Page 24 of the report.
Item B3.1.
Yeah,
this one here, no.
Yeah, no problem. And so the employee leave entitlements, so that's basically a calculation on our leave balances and the accumulating leave balances we have over several years. So that's a calculation that's done through a report. When we have a high volume of leave that is actually taken, that balance starts to become diminished. So for a very long time, we have had a pattern of really carrying a very high leave balance. Some of that leave balance has been readjusted this year as well. And we've also made a slight difference in the provision. So that's a provision calculation. It's not the total leave taken for the year.
That's a provision, though. That's what I understand. That provision, I recall takes into account 25% of what potentially could be.
There's a different approach taken. There's not each council takes a different measured approach, and it depends on the staff cohort. There's more of a detailed calculation. So I can certainly give that as a question for notice, and I prefer to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn.
And can I assume that that figure's lower because we have encouraged council staff that have had a lot of accrued leave to take the leave, use it up, not keep building it and accruing it. And therefore, you've got a less of a provision for it.
That's certainly part of the process that we're encouraging, and there's also some leave that has also been taken.
It's been taken. It's been
so those
drawn down.
Pre-existing balances have come down.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, a similar question in relation to opposite page, item B, 3.2, material and services. There's an amount for subscriptions and publications. That seems to increase very substantially from 2022, where it was 240,000, to the current situation last financial year, where it's now 533,000. Is there an explanation for that?
Finance Director.
Yes, certainly. So to some extent, the subscription and publication, there is a degree of reclassification there as well, because previously some of the software subscriptions were classified, and we've subsequently created another GL code to split out software subscriptions and also publications. Subscription publications also includes industry association subscriptions. So there has been, but the best thing I can do is provide a detailed answer, and I can give you a breakdown and put that question to notice rather than.
But broadly speaking, it wouldn't be a case of there being very heavy increase in subscriptions and publications, more a case of reclassification.
Yes, it is. Yes, and some more GL codes being created.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, my final clarification is on page 47 of the business paper, under the heading B, internal allocations, then further down subheading internal allocations. There's an item which is carryover of Baronia Park works, which is nothing in 2022. It's now 2,269. Can we get better explanation of what that amount is?
Finance Director.
So page 47, is it?
I believe that, and I stand to be corrected, that is a change in the accounting standard, which means that we have to report on expenditure in the year that it's actually undertaken. So the majority of works for Baronia is going to be done in this financial year. Sorry, Director, that could be completely wrong, but that's how I read it.
I would probably just like to clarify the question rather than I wouldn't want to. I didn't quite grab your question. And
well, similar to other questions I've asked earlier, but if you have, it's about 2/3 of the way down page 47 of the business paper,
yes,
or 32 of the report, which gives an item which is described as carryover works Baronia Park. So the amount is 2,699.
6.6.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 2.7 million in round figures. So we have a description of what that amount is.
I'm sorry, I actually assumed that you were looking at another part of the note because there is another reference to Baronia Park. That's exactly right. So what that is works in progress. So the Baronia Park project hadn't started. So when you at this particular table, carryover works, and that's basically works in progress. So this time last year, we hadn't commenced that project. So that's why there was no balance there.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to speak to it, I was delighted to see that despite the increasing cost of everything that's happened over the last year or so, the price of street lighting has continued to creep downward, and I assume that's because of our more sustainable choice in street lighting. Unfortunately, however, electricity and heating has doubled, and so won't our new solar panels be seeing some sustainability savings there in next year's report? And also our printing and stationery costs have doubled. And so once again, I'd really love to encourage as many people as possible to consider a paper light approach to the way we do business at council. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Quinn, stop waving your papers around. I'm very aware of that. Councillors, any speakers against? For? I will just say a big thank you to the staff. Obviously, having a operational surplus of some 3.2 million this year is a significant turnaround. And although the operational deficit is something we need to continue to address, it's a reflection of the work that the general manager and the staff have done to get us to a position where we're getting that to a more manageable figure, and hopefully soon to a nil figure. Councillors, Councillor Quinn, right of reply? No, councillors? Yes. Councillor Williams.
If you look at the papers, it appears that we're in deficit if we take the capital out.
Yes, operational
so we've
deficit.
got an operational surplus, is that correct?
We have a operational surplus of $3.22 million and a net operating deficit result before capital items of 1.97, which has been reduced significantly from the projection of our 10-year projection of operational deficits. Before capital items.
Before capitals.
Correct. Yes, but the quantum is reducing year on year. Councillors, any further questions, clarifications? Councillor Quinn, right of reply? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now move to item 4.3. Amendment to Hunters Hill Council fees and charges financial year 23-24 credit card surcharge. Councillor Williams moved, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion, councillors? If not, I'd have a question. We did have a approach many years ago from Amex. Are we allowed? Have we resolved that? Is that that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So this will now include Amex.
Yes, it will. Yes.
Good. Councillors, any other questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.4, exercise of delegated authority, urgent works. Councillors, move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Quinn. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.5, summary of council investments as at 31st August 2023. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Quinn. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Just a question, that's one I've asked before. It would be helpful in these reports if we could actually get dollar value, not just the interest rate, so that we can get a feel for what return physically we're getting in dollars from these investments. But the report focuses on just the interest rates.
Finance Director.
I might just make a quick comment. So the accrued interest is within the attachment of the report. So you'd like me to put it on the cover, the front cover report? As accrued interest as opposed to.
I just think another column in table 1 that sort of says that the 4.2% on that value, that principle gives you the dollar value. I could work it out.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, clarifications? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.6, draft managing unreasonable conduct by complainants policy on page 103. Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Quinn. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering, the decision seems to be here placed on staff to make the decision of unreasonable conduct. Has any thought been given to a third party review of that decision?
To the General Manager?
I'll
and through the relevant.
I'll just get the author of the report to answer that question, Councillor Williams. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Williams. This model code has come to us through the New South Wales Ombudsman as a model code for council to adopt with any other foresight or any other options available to us that we see fit to include. In terms of your specific question, this policy is adhering to staff and how they conduct not just themselves, but also the level of authority that runs through council to manage complaints and unreasonable complaints that come through. In terms of getting additional oversight, that is not something that the Ombudsman has recommended. If a unreasonable complainant comes to council and are considered to be an unreasonable complainant, then that person has the right to object to a council decision to go back to the Ombudsman for review, for peer review. So that is the process that we are covering.
Councillor Quinn.
But my assumption when I read this is that it'd be a manager level anyway that triggers it. It wouldn't be just the first port of call that straight away triggers it. Is that right?
That's correct, Councillor. So yes, it runs through the public officer here. Is overseen by the general manager. Should someone not feel comfortable with that level of oversight, they can certainly take it to the Ombudsman.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, on page 114 of the paper, yes, the page of the policy, about a third of the way down the page, in relation to America, it's a high level of behaviour, but limiting the frequency of their telephone calls, written correspondence and face-to-face interviews, depending on the nature of the service provided, may limit telephone calls to one a month. Well, first of all, substantive issue, that's going to make it very difficult for that to be resolved with that kind of frequency. So I have a little concern.
Sorry, Councillor Sanderson, is that a question?
Yes. Well, I mean, where did that part of the policy come from?
Certainly.
And has it been, could that be reconsidered? So it's page 10 of the policy, page 114 of the report, about a third of the way down the page in relation to certain behaviours which are quite unacceptable, but even so, the limiting the frequency of telephone calls, written correspondence or face-to-face interviews, depending on the nature of the service, we may limit telephone calls to one every month.
Councillor, this is a model code. That I think that answers your question.
That calls give me concern.
Sorry, Ms. Goodman.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. So I have sought clarity on that through the Ombudsman. They are very comfortable with the timeframes per the telephone calls, emails and letters that have been issued through the model code. Usually what happens is when something gets to this stage of an unreasonable conduct or complaint, that council has gone an enormous amount of time and energy, whether that be through phone calls, emails or letters, and this is the last point of call on that. So the Ombudsman and as an officer with experience in this area, we consider this to be reasonable.
Councillors, any further questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Goodman. The item has been moved and seconded. Any speakers for? Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd just simply say on that point, you know, and it's a bit like the other policy that we dealt with earlier. It's just so that we have a framework in place to deal with the extreme people. And there's always got to be a point that you can come back to a point of reference to say, no, well, we do have a policy on that, sir or madam, I'm sorry. And sometimes that's what some of these people need to alter their behaviour. So I think it's important that we do have these things rigorously documented.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any speakers against? For? Right of reply? Not needed. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.7, asbestos management policy for adoption, page 139 of the paper. Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.8, development applications determined by the local planning panel in August 2023. Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.9, development applications determined by the DCU in August 2023. Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Vergara. Any discussion? If not, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.10, development applications determined under delegated authority in August 2023. Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Preston. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just reflecting on council's initiatives in relation to retaining our tree canopy. And in that package of initiatives which council is doing, tree protection on public, on private land may or could be addressed through the LEP review process. I just notice here that most of these applications that have been approved, with one exception, relate to tree removal. And it just highlights the need for us to get clarity and strength in the way that we consider trees in development applications.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.11, councillor briefings and workshops, page 223. Any mover? Move Councillor Quinn, second is Councillor Preston. Any discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.12, minutes of the Arts Advisory Committee held 30 August 2023. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, we're out of the blocks a bit later this year than what would be desirable, but everything's now in place, and we've called for people to submit their artwork. So I'm looking forward to a very good result as we had last year.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Item 4. Sorry, I better committed to a vote. Councillors, any more discussion? If not, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.13, minutes of the Cultural Events Advisory Committee held 29 August 2023. Moved Councillor Preston, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.14, minutes of the Movement and Transport Advisory Committee held 22 August 2023. Moved Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll just, if I may, ask the officer, if that's all right, Sam. One of the resolutions of the meeting was about the colour of the overpass fencing. Have we made any moves against Transport for New South Wales about the colour of the hideous fence that's gone up on the overpass?
We have raised it with them. I will have to come back to you with any response. I think we're still waiting.
Yeah, okay, but it's gone to them. That's great. And I'd also note just councillors resolution 1/23 there about the risk matrix workshop, which is on this Thursday, isn't it? 5 o'clock. Yep.
Councillor Crassoy.
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, there's a few recommendations from that committee meeting that help inform the staff. So I'm assuming councillors have read those recommendations and are comfortable with them to approve the minutes.
Yes. Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor Quinn.
I think that's a good point made. The particular ones there, because we had a specific resolution of the council about the traffic calming on Crown Street.
Yes.
So that's a particular one in here that councillors need to be aware of, where the recommendations come back to do some of that.
Yes, thank you, councillors. I'll take that as your right of reply, Councillor Quinn. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.15, minutes of CAP on held 16 August 2023. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. We have nil correspondence, nil general item general business. If not, I'll move to questions with notice. Item 7.1, response to Councillor Ross Williams on page 249. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a motion in relation to that matter, which I've passed on to the General Manager.
Yes.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Williams, can I just get some clarity here in regards to what you've emailed? So I can absolutely see this one, but there's two other attachments which appears to be the same thing. Is there three or just two separate things?
There's one motion, which is this one.
Yes,
here,
yeah,
And there's two questions without notice.
yeah.
And if they're not showing up on boards, I'll make sure.
It's just that the way the emails come through, sorry, Mr. Mayor, the question, which we'll deal with in a minute, obviously, but in the three attachments, the question without notice where it says in pertaining to around council has recently conducted a street tree planting program, rightly or wrongly, it's just that that attachment's come twice. So if there is a separate one, I don't have that.
Well, I can provide you with.
Yeah, thank you. Sure, that's all good. I just want to make sure we're dealing with all the stuff. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, I haven't received this motion. Did you circulate that to councillors or just to staff?
I just sent it late this afternoon to the General Manager.
Around what time?
Oh, I don't know, Mr. Mayor. It's a pretty simple and short motion that we can work our way through pretty quickly, I would have thought. It's not a complicated one like the earlier one in the business paper. Would you like me to read it, Mr. Mayor?
I'll just give councillors the opportunity to read it. Councillor Williams, you can read your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It relates to Ferdinand Reserve restoration. I note the General Manager's comment that they have the rights to not proceed with the matter any further, but my concern is about what we do about that space. And if you look at the image that I sent through to the General Manager, it has, well, I'll read the motion, sorry. The council investigate and report on what actions can be taken to resolve the bushland at this location to improve biodiversity value and prevent sediment erosion. Point 2, refer the matter to the Bushland Management Advisory Committee for advice and recommendations as to the most appropriate species and methods for its restoration. And 3, ask if appropriate for the parties that carried out the unauthorised work to contribute in kind or via other means to assist the restoration works.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Williams?
Oh, yes, I think it's important that where there's been substantial change in our reserves resulting from resident actions, that we have a plan in place to make sure that we restore that area with or without the assistance of people that may have done that clearing. For the reasons I've said here, that it has biodiversity value, which is now totally lost because it's bare ground. And equally importantly, we're in a situation where, because it's bare ground, sediment will be very mobile when and if we get rain again. And that could end up very clearly through the rest of the reserve and down into the watercourse. I also believe that our Bushland Management Advisory Committee is probably best placed to give us some idea about how we move forward in restoring that area. It did have a tree of, it's not a significant tree on the register, but cheese trees are local, they're important. And from my recollection, quite often a justification for refusal when it's on private property. So there has been this, there is now an opportunity for council to move forward and make sure that area is restored in an appropriate fashion with the help of the Bush Management Advisory Committee. And if parties that were involved in the clearing wish to assist in that process, I think it would be, if appropriate, something that could be followed through with. I'm not saying it's happened in this occasion, but we as a council are dealing with situations where council reserves have been incorporated or used by adjacent residents for their own use rather than being available for public use. So I think it needs to be made very clear that we want this area restored and that we will take the necessary steps to achieve that.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. As I understand it, General Manager, this portion of land and the adjoining couple of owners' portion of land is not actually publicly accessible.
It's difficult to access, Mr. Mayor, yes.
How would you access that?
Or we'd have to investigate it. It's not, it's, as you would be aware, it's not easy to get to, particularly with equipment. But I think based on where the vote goes, I think we'd be more than comfortable as officers to go and do that investigation. I think that's fair and reasonable.
And the coordinator of Parks and Landscapes was aware of this work, and
let's just say, Mr. Mayor, that from when I was advised, because I obviously don't have visibility of everything that's going on in every street, but once I was advised, multiple staff members visited that site on multiple occasions. So within a very short space of time from when Councillor Williams contacted me, and it's my understanding that a resident of the street had actually been in before Councillor Williams had contacted me and made a complaint to staff as well, which was being followed up. So, but I think, you know, what's being proposed here, that's a decision for our councillors respectfully, but I think the approach is fair and reasonable to move with.
Councillor Prieston, question?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. Who actually undertook the works?
The owner of the site at the end of Ernest Street. It's owned by state government, but it has Crown lands. Yeah. Councillors, any other questions?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around the issue, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm hearing is a resident did stuff down there, which was inappropriate, and the responses have been given to Councillor Williams by the General Manager in the questions with notice that are through in the business paper.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, that's not right, Councillor Wynne. It's been answered by the Director of Infrastructure.
By the Director, sorry. By the Director, okay. So the answers have been provided.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm trying to understand therefore why the need for this. Is there lack of satisfaction with the responses that were provided? Is that what we're saying?
Councillor Williams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's one thing for council to make a decision not to prosecute or proceed with unauthorised clearing. It's another to leave one of our important reserves in a state that does pose significant problems, and it flows from this that council should be acting to remediate that area so that the problems that have been created by this are satisfactorily dealt with in a way that protects the biodiversity value and also prevents sediment erosions. These are consequences of the action. And if council's comfortable with not proceeding legally, the next scenario is what do we do as a council to try and remediate that area? Because it's not an insignificant area, it's quite large. There's a photograph there showing you how it's been totally cleared. And that does provide problems. And to me, this is a motion that flows from the answer that the staff have given. And as the General Manager's pointed out, it's probably a reasonable way to go.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Prieston?
Move an amendment to the motion, please.
You may.
This is not my amendment, yeah. I'm doing this on the fly, obviously, because this is the first time I've seen this motion. But I feel like a recommendation should be brought to council rather than the Bushland Management Advisory Committee or the two of those bodies, if there is to be a decision to be made about the use of this reserve. But I just need to ask one question.
Yes, councillor, you may ask a question. Yes.
So this is public land,
Yes.
publicly accessible but can't be accessed, or with great difficulty can be accessed.
It's constrained, as I understand it, by the houses around it.
And so someone in one of those houses around it
Yes.
has undertaken the work.
Yes.
So it's not as though we could put something like a playground or something there.
General Manager?
No.
No.
No one uses it, it's there.
And that's not being proposed.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, councillors,
It's an obscure location.
have you got any further questions, councillor?
No, I actually withdraw my.
Okay. Is there any speakers against? For?
Sorry, I just want to ask a question, if I may.
Councillor Quinn?
To either the director or the general manager. So you see, if I can be quite candid, you see no issue with what's being proposed here. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
If I
Yeah.
before you answer that,
Yeah.
because I'm just, and I'm going to be very candid here, I think we're getting too prescriptive and directive of council staff with a motion like this. So I just want to get an understanding from the general manager or the director if you think this is reasonable.
Councillor Quinn, I'm not quite sure that the general manager can make comments about whether or not the motion is reasonable. If he wishes to, he can, but I get what you're saying, that this is delving into what should be dealt with operationally.
Sure.
General Manager, do you wish to comment?
Don't comment if you're not comfortable.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Sanderson?
Well, if I could just speak to the motion.
No, you may not. Councillors, any speakers against the motion? For the motion, councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Look, this is a matter that you referred to the Bushland Management Advisory Committee, which is an advisory committee of the council that consists of all the bush care groups, including one, the focal part of Ferdinand Street Reserve. Ferdinand Street Reserve has become very difficult to access. You can probably get to it. I haven't tried lately, but I'm sure you can get to it in a kayak or something up from the waterfront or through the residence at number 21. I would make one point in the report. It was the property 25, oh sorry, 23, not 25, for which the clearing occurred. But I think it's completely reasonable for Bushland Management Committee advice. It is after all only an advisory committee, and if it presents a report in that area, it's in council's prerogative to knock back. I wouldn't see why. It's a reserve that needs a great deal of work. I know there are strategies on the western end of it where there are growing longer grasses to do with weed infestation, which has led to some people complaining about the condition of the reserve. It does need some clearing in the middle. I think this is a start in important work on this reserve.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Any speakers against? For?
So
Councillor
can I ask another question, Mr. Mayor? Can I ask in a more general way, have any of the actions that are proposed in this motion already commenced by council officers or are expected to commence by council officers?
General Manager.
That's one that Samantha will have to answer because I wouldn't know where she's at talking about.
Have you seen this motion?
No, we've only received this afternoon.
Yeah. I've got to say, Mr. Mayor, I find it really hard when we get motions that get dropped on the table at a council meeting, and I've said this before to Councillor Sanderson, I struggle to support any motion that's a surprise. I'm a no surprises person, so I just want to make that really clear.
Ms. Zerkett.
I'd have to get back to you, but I know that staff and bush care advisor they've been out to site, they've looked at the site and they've but I can't categorically say exactly what is happening at that site at this point in time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to foreshadow that this matter be deferred.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Quinn. Any speakers against? For? Right of reply, councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just find it extraordinary that we're going to potentially defer this which is just common sense process. And if council staff have already got it under control and under hand, that's fine. That's not reported in the report that I've got before me. But I think it's still important the council act to make sure that that bush area is restored and potential pollution events are mitigated. And who better to help us in that process are the bush care people themselves. And there is a group that looks after that area, and I think it'd be nice to include them in the process. As to access, I think council's got to look at itself, to be quite honest. I can recall 40 years ago, I could walk right along that foreshore. It is suffering from a level of, I won't use the term neglect, but of lack of maintenance in that precinct. And I do commend the bush care people that are spending time down there. But I think it requires, through this investigation, looking at what needs to be done to restore that area and do it in consultation with the bush care management group. In reference to Councillor Quinn's comments about blindsiding and whatever, it's legitimate for councillors to submit motions to the council meeting. Resolutions are changed, amendments are made on the run. This has been provided in the spirit of trying to ensure that we get the best out of that reserve and that we make sure that it's operating as an important part of our biodiversity network. So I disagree. I think councillors are quite entitled to put motions and amendments to the table. Sometimes it's not possible to be able to share them immediately. And for a short motion like this, I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is lost.
Mr Mayor, I move that the matter be deferred for further consideration of and a further report by the relevant council officer.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. That's moved. Is that seconded? Councillor Prieston. Could I just have that wording?
So that the matter be deferred for further consideration of and a further report by the relevant council officer. Matter is not dead, still alive.
That's moved and seconded. Councillors, are we all aware of what we're voting on? Councillor Quinn, do you wish to speak to the deferral?
I think everyone's got the gist
Thank
of
you.
what I'm thinking.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Quinn. Any other speakers? Councillor Williams speaking against?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
I just, for something as simple as this, I can't understand why it's been kicked down the proverbial path to another meeting. It's pretty simple and it's basic premise that we move forward now to work on the issue. What's a further report going to do except what's been asked for in this motion? I think that it's just kicking the can down the road and ignoring the reality of what's happened there and what we need to do as a council.
Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Priest.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I reject any notion from another councillor that another councillor's motion put forward in response to the motion on the table is just merely kicking the can down the road. It's obviously for a purpose and for a reason that councillor and the seconding councillor deem appropriate in light of the circumstances. I'm going to speak for this motion because I just blatantly don't have enough information today, and that's evidenced by the number of questions that we've all had to direct to the General Manager and the reporting officer, who in fact has not seen and had time to digest the motion this evening. And I would like to see more information brought to us so that we can make a sound decision on what is to happen. I do not necessarily disagree that this is a bad course of this is a good course of action, but I just want to be certain because that is good governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? For? Right reply, Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, this is just about working as a team.
Yes.
right? And not just like for the officer, for example, not to be aware that this is coming, I think is impolite. And I think we need to work together as a team. So I'm simply trying to provide time now for Sam and her team to say, righto, what's this about? Okay, we might get a briefing at it at the next briefing, and then we'll get some action. We can hear about it. But to just come and be directive and prescriptive like this without any notice, that's not my style.
Thank you, councillor Quinn. I'll commit that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 7.2, response to Councillor Williams' question without notice. Councillor Sanderson's question without notice. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just come through. Yes, thank you for the report regarding traffic warrants for pedestrian crossings and other traffic storage. That answers the question quite clearly and is very helpful. With regard to traffic stunts for Grant Street, Henley, as I said in the question, meetings of the Motion and Transport Advisory Committee held on the 16th of May and 22nd of August dealt with traffic calming measures for Grant Street, Henley. One of them has been approved tonight, over which I have some concern. Part of my concern raises from the fact that we didn't have all of the information on speed counts in that area. I have requested that they may be made available both from the report that was done by Headway and also as council has had a radar speed unit down there for some time to collect data from that. Now, I was pleased to receive on Wednesday by email the form of that being the Headway report and also a traffic count, but we didn't receive the data in relation to the data that's been collected from the traffic report. So what I would seek is a commitment that would be made available to members of the public transport, the Movement Transport Advisory Committee. And that way I can avoid having to move a motion, which Councillor Quinn will not be happy with. But if
I get notice, I might be.
But if we don't have that commitment, which I trust will be followed up, then I will put the motion. Okay. All right. Now, with respect to 7.3, the wheel park lighting, I note the response. I do have to think that probably we can come up with a better arrangement. And I would, again, without putting a motion, I trust that we would follow up on better measures to deal with the waste of electricity. I mean, one of Jean's and my habits is I probably shouldn't give this away publicly, but we frequently go down to the Woolwich Pier Hotel to avail ourselves of the cheap steaks on a Tuesday night. I don't know whether I have time tomorrow, so don't expect me there necessarily. And just about every Tuesday night we drive past there, the lights are blazing at Wheel Park and there's no one at home. I don't know, the next door neighbours there have raised this with me a number of occasions. Well, this is just a straight out waste of electricity. And I think rather than being reliant on people reporting that they won't be using and therefore not turning the lights on or whatever, there should be some sort of a system where you give the people using the ability to turn the lights on and have them expire if the use ceases. And I think that would make a considerable saving, further saving to our electricity bill, which Councillor Cresswell was talking about or addressed earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I might just add that to the identified sites for further investigation, I'd actually like to add the raised speed hump at the front of the Woolwich Pier, which people mistake for a zebra crossing all the time, could probably be added to that list because people in between Kitchenetta and Ironwood and the Pier Hotel, people mistake that
I think that's there. I think it's only Frankie Avenue.
Yeah. Item 7.3, response to councillor questions. Councillor Tatiana Vergara. Councillor Vergara, are you satisfied with the response?
Just a clarification, the responses received, did not receive documents. The additional. Otherwise, right, we did receive documents, right?
General
Not
Manager?
individually, I can see the word individually, thank you. That's better.
Thank you, councillor. Any other items of general business? If not, councillors?
Just before we close, Mr. Mayor, so.
General Manager.
Just Councillor Williams, you've got these two questions without notice. You happy for us to take that under advisory and come back with an answer to these? Just an observation. It's your prerogative to bring these as questions without notice. That's fine, and we'll deal with them. But these sort of things, in my view, could also be handled through the council request process, because that way it's captured and we have to come back with you with a response. But it's all good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, any other questions without notice? Councillor Vergara? Yes, in general business.
The request is about the broken gate at the Church Street Park. 9 o'clock this morning was fixed, so I want to publicly say that's correct.
Thank you, councillor Vergara. I'm sure that is well received. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I know you said general business, but this is just, again, acknowledgement of staff and yourself. I attended the citizenship ceremony on Sunday, and it was extremely well done, extremely well received by the many, how many?
21.
21 people that became naturalised at that ceremony. So always impressed with our citizenship ceremonies.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Any other items of general business? If not, I will close the meeting at 8:22. Thank you, councillors, councillor staff.